Recently, many of you may have heard journalists and commentators using the expression deep state. You may have heard them say, the deep state is threatening our democracy, or the deep state is conspiring against the president, or help, help, agents of the deep state are coming to, and then a high-pitched scream followed by a horrific gurgling noise and an ominous silence. You may have found yourself asking, what is the deep state? You may have then found yourself vanishing off the face of the earth, leaving nothing but a pair of eyeglasses, a gold tooth, and a trail of blood. Well, today, I'd like to explain to you the meaning of the term deep state. The deep state is that group of influential people in bureaucratic agencies, intelligence services, and the military who tend to remain in positions of power no matter who gets elected. The deep state is not a conspiracy in the sense of faceless evildoers gathering in secret locations to thwart any threat against their interests. Most of them do have faces, although they like to hang back in the shadows, making their faces difficult to see. Mostly, however, they simply go about the business of making regulations, gathering information, and arranging the mysterious deaths of anyone who opposes them. Now, we all need government regulations and intelligence, but the deep state can get out of control. During the Obama administration, for instance, there were so many new and restrictive regulations that they increased our energy and medical costs, hampered small businesses, reduced internet innovation, and ultimately cost taxpayers a stupendous $100 billion every year. Here's how it works. Let's say Congress constitutionally passes a clean water law, making it illegal to dump toxic chemicals into public waterways. The Environmental Protection Agency then issues a regulation declaring your toilet a public waterway and forbidding you to go to the bathroom for the rest of your life. If you sue the EPA because you need to use the bathroom, the courts will cite the Chevron rule, which says only the EPA can decide if the EPA is violating the rules of the EPA. If you say, wait, what? That's crazy, then videos of your online sex with a 16-year-old girl named Starlight, who's really a 47-year-old fat man named Shlomo, will inexplicably turn up on HBO. If you cancel your HBO in protest, you could then be fined $100,000 a day until the fine reaches $14 million or you disappear without a trace, whichever comes first. Leftists and the media, but I repeat myself, tend to love the deep state because it empowers elites like themselves to outlaw the life choices of all those annoying we the people types in the flyover states. Therefore, if a president comes into office who threatens to oppose the deep state may retaliate by leaking his secrets to a compliant press who will then spin them into hysterical conspiracy theories, allowing intelligence agencies to tangle him in useless investigations. Fortunately, I can tell you that that can't happen here. I can't tell you that it can happen here because then I'd be killed. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shape, tipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
All right, well, this is probably the last Andrew Klavan shows, and tomorrow, just my shoes will be left after I attacked the deep state. So here's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about, we were talking about yesterday, Trump's attack on the culture and how important I think that is and how I think he's really doing a good thing, even though there's sometimes this conflict between what he says and what he does. I mean, yesterday was a great Trump day. Trump had a terrific day, made a great appointment. We'll talk about all that. But whenever I go out, I very rarely go out and give speeches. And the reason for that is I'm a writer. I write at my desk. If I have to leave my desk, it costs me time, it costs me money, it costs me production. So I don't like to do it unless they pay me thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, which they never do for some reason. But whenever I do go out and give a speech, especially if I'm giving a speech about the culture, I always begin it with 3 quotes. And the quotes are these. One is from Percy Bysshe Shelley, who was one of the great romantic poets, the great British Romantic poets. He wrote, "Poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world." So Shelley was writing when poetry was the best-selling form of fiction. You know, if you wanted to be a famous person, you would probably write poetry. Sir Walter Scott had best-selling poems. Byron was the most famous literary figure of the time. So he was saying poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. They write the laws, though nobody knows it. Poets write the laws. James Joyce was a novelist at the time when novelists were the best-selling form of fiction. They were just giving way to the movies. And he wrote a novel about a novelist, called Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. And at the end, the young man, Stephen Dedalus, has this revelation where he realizes he's going to go off and become a novelist. And he says, "I go to encounter for the millionth time the reality of experience and to forge in the smithy of my soul the uncreated conscience of my race." And what he's saying is, as an artist, I go and I encounter reality and I turn it in the factory of my soul. I turn it into the things that form my race's conscience and my race's consciousness. So he, again, is saying that artists form people's consciousness. And the final quote is a quote, I don't know where it comes from, but my friend Andrew Breitbart used to say it all the time. He used to love to say, politics is downstream of culture, meaning that by the time you get into the voting booth, your mind has been shaped by 1,000 pieces of information flowing into your head, art, the movies that you watch, the stories that you read, the stories that are being told, the sentiments that are expressed all around you. And these become a form of thinking so powerful that you don't even know they've shaped you. You don't even know they've shaped you. The example I always give is George Washington, the father of American liberty, who could not understand why his slaves didn't work hard. He couldn't understand why they would escape, why they would want to be free. It took him a long time to figure that out because the narrative around him was so powerfully accepting of slavery that he couldn't see it. And that's why I think what Donald Trump is doing is actually kind of history-making and amazing and positive. You know, there's politics. I see everything in these two kind of catchment areas. There's politics, so we can take, you know, this decision and that decision, say, yes, this is good, we like this is bad. You know, he's going to do things. I think he has certain left-wing tendencies. He's probably going to do things I don't like, and I'll say that, you know, I don't like that policy. But what he's doing in the culture, weirdly enough, I think is the most important thing he has done so far. That thing he did with that press conference, which he followed up with a speech in Florida, it changed everything. It changed everything. These guys were crawling all over him like the Lilliputians over Gulliver. They were tying him down with nonsense about the Russian conspiracy. And look, hey, later, if it turns out they get some facts about a Russian conspiracy, I'll say, hey, they had it. They got the story. But they don't have the story now, and that hasn't stopped them from running front-page stories trying to imply that Trump is somehow indebted to the Russians, that he's somehow working with the Russians. But what is really happening? When you look at what's really happening, it is a very different story. Before we get to today's news, the McAllister appointment and all this stuff, let's just go back and look at the speech that he made in Florida after this press conference where he hammered this home, talking about the press and going directly to the people. This is the first Trump cut.
The dishonest media, which has published one false story after another with no sources, even though they pretend they have them, they make them up in many cases. They just don't want to report the truth, and they've been calling us wrong now for 2 years. They don't get it, but they're starting to get it. I can tell you that. They've become a big part of the problem. They are part of the corrupt system. Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, and Abraham Lincoln, and many of our greatest presidents fought with the media and called them out, oftentimes on their lies. When the media lies to people, I will never, ever let them get away with it. I will do whatever I can that they don't get away with it. They have their own agenda, and their agenda is not your agenda.
Now, I'm a First Amendment absolutist. Short of crying fire in a crowded theater, I believe that everybody should be able to say anything. There should be no restrictions on the press. Don't forget, it was Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and the Democrats who wanted to shut down the press, who wanted to stop David Bossie from putting out his film against Hillary Clinton, who were complaining about spending, which, remember, money in the political arena is speech. So Donald Trump has done exactly diddly nothing to restrict speech or spy on reporters, which Barack Obama also did. He has done nothing to hold up FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests. He may do that later, but he hasn't done it yet. All he has done is struck back, and that is revolutionary because he's a Republican and because you notice Congress is doing absolutely nothing. Why? Because they're so afraid of the press that they're hiding under the desks. So the thing is, this of course drives the press crazy because it's never happened to them before. They've never gotten the slap they so richly deserve. And I want to put in a cut Reince Priebus and Chris Wallace going at each other because Chris Wallace is an honest guy. He's an honest reporter. He works for Fox News. There's no way you can say he's part of the left-wing conspiracy. But the media is so left-wing, it's so left-wing that even an honest man becomes a sort of tool of the dishonesty. So here he is fighting with Reince Priebus as Priebus explains why they don't like the coverage.
But you get about 10% coverage on the fact you did a very successful meeting with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of the UK, the Prime Minister of Canada.
We covered all of those news conferences live. Everybody did.
Right, sure. Yeah, right. But then as soon as it was over, the next 20 hours is all about Russian spies.
But you don't get to tell us what to do, right?
Nothing's happening.
You don't get to tell us what to do any more than Barack Obama did. Barack Obama whined about Fox News all the time, but I got to say, he never said that we were an enemy of the people.
Let me tell you something. He said a lot of things about Fox News, Chris. I think you ought to go check the tape. He blamed you for a lot of things, and I'm surprised as someone from Fox that you'd forget all the shots that he took.
No, he took
Fox
the shots,
News.
and we didn't like him. And frankly, we don't like this either, because but he never went as far as President Trump has, and that's what's concerning, because it seems like he crosses a line when he talks about that we're an enemy of the people.
See, it's just not true. Obama went far, far beyond that. I didn't like the phrase enemy of the people either, although I think there's a certain amount of truth to it with our news media. But I didn't like that line, but that doesn't matter. I mean, Obama went so much further in, subpoenaing phone records and trying to criminalize James Rosen's job, trying to say that he had essentially committed treason. They were awful. The Obama administration was awful. All this guy has done is struck back. And when Chris Wallace says, you don't get to tell us what to do like a 2-year-old child, that doesn't mean a thing. Nobody's telling him what to do. All he's telling him is what he has done. All Priebus is saying is what you've done. He's not saying what he has done, what he has to do. He's saying what he's done. Now, and let me show you why. I just want to show you why this is so. That the thing about the media is it's not this story, it's not that story. It's an entire atmosphere. As Trump himself said, it's a tone, okay? We've talked a lot about how all this nonsense about Russia, they forget about the fact that Barack Obama leaned over to the Russian president and told him to send the outgoing Russian president told him to send a message to Vladimir Putin, the incoming Russian president, that after his final election, Obama said, I'll have a lot more flexibility. And he was referring to missile defenses, to stopping the missile defenses from being arrayed in Europe. Okay, serious stuff. I mean, I'm not calling it treason, but that was a serious thing to do. Nothing like the Trump administration has been found out to have done nothing anywhere close to this. Here is MSNBC's Katie Tour, who is on Twitter all the time talking about how reporters are like firemen. They run to a story like a fireman runs to the fire. Here's Katie Tour interviewing Florida Congressman Francis Rooney. And Rooney brings this up. Listen to Katie's reaction.
You seem to have a lot of confidence, though, that he is going to treat Russia in as tough a way as his predecessors did.
I do. And I think he'll treat it.
I'm just wondering where that confidence comes from.
Obama.
I'm just wondering where that confidence comes from.
Well, he's got a lot of conservative people in the government. And he's a business guy, so he might have spoken a little less nuanced than very trained generals and State Department leaders might. But I think he knows that, as he said all through the campaign, we're going to keep America strong. We're going to keep America safe, both at home and abroad. And you can't do that without dealing with Russia.
He also has a number of people that were, at least in his administration until last week, who were friendly with Russia, General Mike Flynn being one of them. His former campaign CEO was Paul Manafort, who's got ties to Russia. His Secretary of State was given the Medal of Friendship by Russia. So you say there's a lot of conservatives who are going to push back on Russia, but I see a lot of folks within Donald Trump's administration who have a friendlier view of Russia than maybe past administrations did.
Well, I think it was Obama that leaned over to Putin and said, I'll have a little more flexibility to give you what you want after the re-election.
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to, Congressman.
She doesn't, you know, I mean, she could have said it was not Putin, it was Medvedev, but it was the former guy, but he said to send the message to Putin. He said, yes, I'll tell Vladimir, I will pass this on to Vladimir, that you will give over Europe to our clutches, you know. but I have no idea what you're talking about, Congressman. That is the problem. That's this thing, the Obama administration, it was scandal-free. It was scandal-free, hooray. You know, I mean, it's this is the problem, and it's because the left, and that means the media, because the media is ensconced in its own narrative, they don't even know they're lying. Even guys like Chris Wallace are defending a dishonest organ of information because he doesn't know. They are stuck in the narrative, and so up until now have we been stuck in the narrative, and Trump has really started to shatter that. I think it is a positive thing in and of itself, with some of his appointments, with the judge, the pick for the Supreme Court, with his rearranging our relationships with Israel. I think it is a positive, good in and of itself. I'm going to talk about some of the dangers I think he's facing, but you got to come over to thedailywire.com and hear that if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube. Also, I forgot to mention, tomorrow is Mailbag Day. How could I forget to mention? Your problems are almost over. All your troubles are almost over. You can put your troubles in the old kit bag and smile, brother, smile, because we will answer all your questions if you subscribe to thedailywire.com, a lousy $8 a month, and all your problems solved, cheap at the price as far as I'm concerned.